Attention story lovers. If you're a fan of high-stakes drama, heart-stopping intrigue, and jaw-dropping twists, you've come to the right place. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Are you ready for the secret that will shake the very foundations of high society? Brace yourself, this is the secret of Sunset Manor. The late afternoon sun cast its golden rays over the rolling hills of Napa Valley, bathing Sunset Manor in a soft, ethereal glow. Rows of immaculate white chairs adorned the sprawling lawn. A string quartet played a gentle melody from a secluded corner. Laughter and the delicate clinking of champagne flutes drifted on the breeze. The guests, all impeccably dressed in elegant pastel hues, fanned themselves with wedding programs bearing the names Marcus and Ava in graceful black calligraphy. Billionaire tech mogul Marcus Thorne stood at the altar with a rehearsed composure, one hand folded over the other clenched slightly behind his back. His steel gray suit was tailored to perfection, but his eyes flickered every few seconds toward the path. He was calm, too calm, as if this wasn't his first wedding. Across from him, Ava Thompson adjusted the silk hem of her dress. At 25, she was radiant but nervous beneath her makeup, her smile freezing every few seconds, tense and uncertain. Something inside her whispered that not all was right. The officiant cleared his throat and turned a page, and that's when the murmurs began. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the music. Heads turned. Guests leaned forward, squinting toward the edge of the garden path. One shadow stretched across the polished stone aisle, then another, and three more, much smaller. Alice Sterling walked slowly into the garden. She was not invited, yet she walked with the deliberate calm of someone who belonged. Her dress was simple, long-sleeved and black, almost out of place, but elegant in its sobriety. Her hair was pulled back, her face bare, no jewelry save for a thin gold chain barely visible at her neck. In each hand, she held a child. A third, slightly older, clung to her leg, toddling alongside her. 3 children, all with eyes too familiar to ignore. A choked sound escaped a guest's throat. Someone whispered, "Are those?" and trailed off. Ava turned, abruptly. Marcus's face went blank. Not surprised, not horrified, just frozen. As if he had rehearsed this exact nightmare, and it had finally arrived. Alice didn't stop at the entrance. She walked 10 full paces into the ceremony. Then she stopped. Her eyes met Marcus's, like ice cracking against stone. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The children clung to her silently. One of them, a little boy, lifted his head and looked straight at the groom. He blinked. Then he smiled. The crowd held a collective breath. One woman in the second row audibly gasped. Another clutched her pearls. Ava took a slight step back, her bouquet trembling. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the silence. "What is this?" Marcus didn't reply. His lips parted. Then they closed again. The officiant looked down at his notes and slowly closed his book. From somewhere near the back, a camera clicked. Then another. The sound of shutter snaps cascaded like falling dominoes, guests capturing what they still couldn't process. Alice finally moved. She turned slightly, guiding the children to a row near the back. The crowd instinctively parted to let her through, without resistance. Just silence and stares. She sat down. The children climbed onto the bench beside her, their legs dangling, whispering to each other. One by one, eyes returned to the altar, but the spell had been broken. Marcus's palms now glistened with sweat. His gaze darted to Ava, who remained motionless, the color draining from her cheeks. She let her bouquet drop. "I asked you," she said slowly, her voice breaking. "I asked you if there was anything I should know." Still, Marcus said nothing. Alice crossed one leg over the other and looked up again. Serene. Calm. Her eyes did not waver. The boy beside her tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy!" he said, loud enough for the first few rows to hear. "Is that the man from the picture?" Alice looked at him. "Yes," she replied. "That's him." The officiant cleared his throat and stepped back. And Marcus Thorne, tech titan and architect of the day, stood speechless as the walls of his carefully fabricated life began to groan. From somewhere near the caterer's tent, someone murmured, "This wedding is over." But Alice didn't come to end the wedding. She came to start the reckoning. Can you imagine the shock of the guests? What would you do in Ava's shoes? Think about it and leave your thoughts in the comments. The sun of Napa Valley faded into a memory. The whispers of the wedding only lingered in echoes now. But 5 years ago, in a stone house in San Francisco, adorned with lavender curtains and the soft hum of a classical piano, Marcus and Alice Thorne had everything the world admired. To outsiders, they were a power couple. Marcus, the visionary founder of Thorne Tech, a name on the rise in data automation. Alice, a former criminal profiler turned non-profit strategist. Together, they were brilliance and beauty, wrapped in effortless charm. And when Alice learned she was finally pregnant, after 2 miscarriages and 4 years of trying, the world inside that stone house glowed. She danced with him in the kitchen, barefoot, as flour powdered the countertop and risotto gently burned on the stove. "We did it," she whispered, her hands on her belly. Marcus kissed her forehead and replied, "You did." But even then, something inside him had begun to flicker. Not to fade, just to flicker. In the months that followed, Alice dedicated herself to preparing their lives for the baby. She read every book, rearranged the furniture. She wrote little notes in a leather-bound journal, titled, "For When You Get Here." Marcus, however, grew quieter. He often left early and came home late. Some nights, he didn't come home at all, but he told her it was the pressure. New investors, acquisition talks. "Everything's on the line, Alice. You want our child to be born into a fortress, don't you?" She did, and she believed him. At first, but then came the change in his scent. A strange, perfumed scent. The receipts in his jacket. French dinners on nights he claimed to be in Los Angeles, and the half-deleted text messages, still traceable. Alice didn't accuse him. She reasoned. She rationalized. But doubt became a parasite. One night, she sat across from him at dinner, watching his hand tap a pattern against his water glass. "You haven't asked about the baby's name in weeks," she said softly. He didn't look up. "We'll figure it out. We used to dream about it. You said you wanted a girl to call your little queen." He patted her hand distractedly. They're heavier now," she swallowed. Heavier than becoming a father? It was then that he looked up. His eyes were distant, as if her words had reached a version of him she no longer knew. "You don't understand the kind of weight I'm carrying, right now." And then he got up and left. The door closed with a finality that rattled the picture frames on the hallway wall. Alice sat in silence, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the table. That night, she waited until 2 a.m. before calling. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. Then the text came. "Don't wait up. Meetings ran long." But she knew then that he wasn't at a meeting. He wasn't in Los Angeles. He wasn't building a fortress. He was building an exit. And the quiet betrayal of it all, the way he chose distance over honesty, would haunt her more than any affair. She put a hand to her belly, whispering to the child inside, I'll protect you, even if he won't. The wind outside lifted the corner of the nursery blueprint on the countertop, flipping it to a blank page, unwritten. Like her future, like her new beginning. Have you ever felt betrayed in this way? What red flags would have made you suspicious? Share your experience in the comments. It all started with a pair of heels left by the front door, too small to be Alice's, too new to be forgotten. Alice noticed them one Tuesday morning. Marcus had flown in from a conference in Seattle the night before. The shoes weren't hers, but they were by her shoes as if they belonged, neatly lined up, deliberately placed. She picked them up. Chanel, new, expensive. Size 6. She put them in the hall closet and said nothing, but the next morning they were back, beside her own. Ava. That was her name. 25. Fresh out of the business program at Berkeley. Intern turned executive assistant at Thorn Tech. And somehow, though Alice couldn't recall when it happened, she became omnipresent. At first, Alice met her in passing, a quick introduction at a company gala. "This is Ava," Marcus had said, his hand firm on Alice's back. Smart as a whip. She could run this company if she wanted. Ava had smiled, polite and poised. "I've heard so much about you," she'd said. "Your nonprofit work is incredible." Alice smiled back, but her spine tingled. Ava was beautiful, not in an overt way, but a polished one. Straight brown hair pulled back in a professional bun. Clear, serene voice, never too loud, always accommodating, always near Marcus. Too near. Weeks passed, and Alice saw less of her husband and more of his assistant. Marcus forwarded messages from Ava when he was too busy. He scheduled Alice's doctor's appointments through her. Even the nursery paint swatches were picked up by her. "Why is your assistant coordinating my OBGYN?" Alice asked one night, scrolling through her messages. "She's just helping," Marcus said dryly. "I'm juggling 2 acquisitions. She's reliable. I'm your wife, Marcus, not a meeting space." He sighed. "Alice, don't make this into something it's not." That was the first time he said it. The second time was a week later, when Alice called his office and Ava answered. "I'm sorry, he's on a closed-door call," she'd said. "Would you like me to tell him you called?" Alice paused. "I'm his wife. I don't need to leave a message." Ava's voice remained soft. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne. I'll have him call you back." He never did. And when Alice brought it up later, his silence, the distance, the smell of perfume again on his neck. Marcus's tone grew brittle. "Alice, you're being paranoid. She's an assistant. That's all." "Then why does she have a key to our apartment?" He narrowed his eyes. "That's for work deliveries." "At midnight?" He stood up then, pushing his chair back hard enough to rattle the floorboards. "God, do you listen to yourself? Jealousy doesn't suit you." Her breath hitched. "This isn't jealousy, it's intuition." "No," he said coldly. "It's obsession." The room tilted slightly. Alice sat down, clutching her stomach. 7 months pregnant. Her heart pounded. He no longer looked at her as a husband. He looked at her as a burden. "I'm tired, Alice," he said after a pause, "of walking on eggshells around you. Anxiety, not betrayal. No secrets." This is how it always began. She remembered studying behavioral patterns in domestic crimes, the shifting of blame, the rewriting of memory. He was gaslighting her, gently, deliberately. Alice stayed awake. That night, while Marcus showered, her hand traced the shape of her belly under the covers. Outside the bathroom, she noticed a second phone on the counter. Not Marcus's usual model, a burner phone. She reached for it, but stopped. Her hands were trembling. Then she backed away. He wanted her unstable. He wanted her to doubt herself. She wouldn't give him that, but something was breaking. And 2 weeks later, it would break entirely. Do you think Alice should have confronted Marcus sooner? Or was her intuition guiding her down the right path? Let us know what you think. The apartment was too silent. Alice closed the door behind her, balancing a grocery bag in one hand and a folder from her latest prenatal appointment in the other. She was 8 months pregnant. She barely slept. She was always sore. And the baby had kicked 4 times on the taxi ride home. The place should have smelled of Marcus's cologne. It should have echoed with the soft click of his keyboard in the home office, or the sound of his espresso machine whirring in the kitchen. Instead, there was silence. Stillness. The kind that didn't belong. "Marcus?" she called softly. No answer. She passed the hallway mirror and saw her reflection. Dark circles, chapped lips, hair pulled back in a hurry. The woman staring back at her was a stranger. She walked into the kitchen and saw the note before she saw anything else. It was folded once, left on the counter next to her favorite mug. Just one line, scrawled in Marcus's clipped handwriting. "I'm not ready to be a father." No salutation, no signature, no goodbye. The grocery bag slipped from her hand. Apples rolled across the floor. A bottle of vitamins shattered. The prenatal folder hit the tile like a final sigh. Alice stood motionless for several seconds. Then she sat down, right there on the cold kitchen floor. At first, she said nothing, did nothing, just stared at the note, reading it over and over, as if it would change. By nightfall, she had checked every room, half-empty closets, empty drawers. His watch was gone. The laptop was gone. Even the toothbrush was gone from the holder. He didn't just leave. He erased himself. No phone call, no email, not even a letter from an attorney. The next morning, she checked the bank accounts. Her name was gone from the joint account. And so was $82,000. She called his assistant. Ava answered on the second ring. "Hello," Alice's voice cracked. "Where is he?" Silence. Then, I'm not sure what you mean. Don't play dumb. He's gone. Disappeared. Did he say anything? Ava paused. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Thorne. Marcus hasn't been in contact with me since last week." Alice ended the call without another word. The days blurred. Time lost meaning. She drifted through the apartment like a ghost, trapped inside her own life. The nursery was half-painted, the walls a soft sage green. An unopened crib sat in its box in the corner. Next to it, the stuffed giraffe Marcus had bought when they first heard the heartbeat. Some nights, she would curl up on the floor, hugging her belly, whispering lullabies into the silence. "Your father doesn't want you," she said once. "But I do. I always will." She stopped answering calls, even from her mother. She lost count of how many nights she woke up screaming. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was surgical, cold, as if someone had removed the oxygen from the room instead of the furniture. Marcus's disappearance was not news. He was too careful, too private. Thorne Tech carried on without comment. Rumors fluttered through social circles. Trouble at home, work stress. Maybe she pushed him too hard. No one asked her directly. They didn't need to. They already believed what he had allowed them to believe. And Alice? She disappeared too. Emotionally, mentally, slowly. She closed the blinds on her old life. Friends, meetings, future plans. It all stopped. Everything hurt. The final breaking point came 2 weeks later when a legal envelope arrived. Not divorce papers, not even a formal separation. Just a property reassignment. Marcus had signed over his share of the apartment in a note, with no explanation. Just a cold transfer, as if she were an investment to be written off. Alice looked at the document, her fingers tracing the signature. Then she did something unexpected. She stood up, She walked into the nursery and started building the crib herself. Screw by screw, breath by breath, tear by tear. And when the sun came up the next morning, the crib was complete, because Marcus was gone. But the children were still coming. Can you feel Alice's strength in this moment? What do you think motivated her to keep going? Let us know what you think. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and wilting roses. Alice stared at the ceiling, the beeping of monitors softening into a background hum. Her fingers picked at the bedsheet, weak from the emergency C-section, her body stitched together, but her spirit unraveled. A nurse walked in, pushing 3 small cots. "Ready to meet your babies?" she whispered. Her voice warm. Alice nodded. Barely. One by one, they were placed beside her, swaddled in pale blue and cream, eyes closed, mouths slightly ajar. They didn't cry. They slept peacefully, unaware of the vacuum into which they had arrived. Alice's lips trembled as she looked at them. 3, she whispered. It had been 3 all along. The ultrasounds had only shown 2. One must have hidden behind the others, a surprise even the doctors hadn't predicted. Life, it seemed, had saved its sharpest edge for the very end. Her heart ached as much from awe as from fear. 3 mouths, 3 futures, 1 mother, and no father. Not even a word from Marcus. Not a flower, not a call, not a check. He had vanished with the ease of a man shedding a coat. And with the birth of these children, it was now painfully clear. He wasn't coming back. The hospital staff was kind. One even whispered, "You're so strong," as she adjusted Alice's IV. But Alice didn't feel strong. She felt erased. When she got home, the silence grew louder. The nights became a ritual of rotations, feedings, burps, lullabies, and the occasional screams that fractured her sleep into glass fragments. The crib she had built now held more than she expected. She had to buy 2 more, second-hand. She named them Ella, Jonas, and Mia, each name scrawled in her pregnancy journal. Names she had once dreamed of whispering with Marcus in bed. Now she whispered them to no one. The bills mounted. The cost of formula crushed her bank account. The nonprofit she once ran discreetly issued a statement about her extended leave. Her mother offered help, but Alice refused. She didn't want pity. She wanted a father to show up, but there was only absence. She applied for government assistance under a pseudonym to avoid media attention. She sold Marcus's last forgotten watch online. She freelanced case reviews at midnight, while a baby slept on her chest. The world forgot her, and she let it. Better to disappear than to be pitied. One afternoon, she opened the fridge and found a bottle of milk. Nothing else. She held Jonas in one arm and cried without a sound. Her body trembled, her face blank. Alice Sterling, the brilliant strategist, the billionaire's wife, was now a shadow on the edge of the world. But in that shadow, something hardened. A new kind of strength. Cold. Focused. He had erased her, but she hadn't erased him. Not yet. Do you think Alice should have accepted her mother's help? What would you do in such a desperate situation? Share your thoughts. The envelope arrived on a rainy Thursday, unmarked, tucked beneath the stroller by Alice's door. She almost didn't see it. Damp at the corners, almost camouflaged against the wet stone. Inside, a business card. Ben Carter, Private Investigations. Discretion guaranteed. There was no note, no return address, but something inside her stirred. She slid the card into the drawer under the sink and didn't touch it for days. Then, one night, when Mia was coughing, Jonas wouldn't sleep, and Ella had thrown up her formula. Alice stared at the ceiling, her eyes burning, her heart torn. She got up, walked to the kitchen, and pulled out the card. The next morning, she made the call. Ben's office was discreet, a single room above a bookstore in a quiet San Francisco neighborhood. He wore a frayed tweed jacket and smelled faintly of rain and printer ink. "I know who he is," Ben said calmly, sliding a folder across the desk. "You're not the first person to walk in here with his name." Alice raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" Ben gave her a level look. "It means Marcus Thorne's pristine public record is a lie." She leaned in. "Show me." The investigation began discreetly. Alice paid in cash. No paper trail, no email, no shared documents. Weeks passed, and Ben worked in the shadows. Alice fed the children by day and reviewed his findings by night. Piles of reports, screenshots, records that began to form a more sinister picture than she had ever imagined. It wasn't just Ava. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft. Calculated, documented theft. Marcus had discreetly moved joint assets before he disappeared. He had forged her initials on property transfers. He had liquidated retirement accounts she didn't even know had matured. It all happened while she was pregnant, bedridden, building cribs. Ben slid a document across the table. "Look here," he said. "That's a signature authorization, dated 2 days after he disappeared." Alice looked at the familiar looping A. "That's not mine," she said. "I never signed that." Ben nodded. "I know. It's a copy and paste job. Sloppy, actually." Another folder contained wire transfers to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, totaling nearly $40 million. Then came the prenuptial agreement. Marcus had insisted on it before they married. Nothing strange, Alice had thought then. But hidden inside the contract was a clause she never remembered signing. In the event of having children, spousal asset protections are nullified unless paternity is acknowledged in writing. There was no such acknowledgement. Alice leaned back, her throat tight. "He built a legal firewall," she whispered. "He planned it." Ben did not argue. And yet, Alice didn't want revenge. Not yet. She wanted facts. Evidence. The truth. Laid bare. Not for her. For her children. So that one day, when they asked where he was, she could hand them a file instead of silence. Ben handed her a last sealed folder. "This one's heavier," he warned. Inside was a set of call records, text messages, photos, Ava, dozens of late-night conversations, hotel records, money transfers labeled consulting. A photo showed Marcus and Ava in a robe in a suite in Geneva, smiling, 6 weeks before Alice gave birth. The pain didn't come this time, just a slow numbness. She closed the folder. "Thank you," she said. Ben watched her for a moment. "You don't seem surprised." "I'm not," she said. Then she stood up. "Now let's see what the bride knows. What would you feel if you discovered such a devastating truth? Do you think Ava is an accomplice or just another victim? Let us know your thoughts." It came in a cream-colored envelope. Alice found it wedged between a utility bill and a flyer for expired coupons, as if it were just another piece of irrelevant mail. Her fingers hesitated. The paper was thick, heavy, the kind used for embossed weddings or diplomatic affairs. She flipped it over. No return address. Inside was a card with a gold leaf border. "Marcus Thorne and Ava Thompson request the pleasure of your company at their wedding ceremony. Villa del Sole, Tuscany. Saturday, September 23rd. 4 p.m. Alice blinked. Once. Twice. Then she laughed. Not the bitter, broken laugh that had dominated the last year. A stunned, breathless laugh. The laugh of someone watching a building collapse in slow motion, and realizing they are no longer inside. He had the audacity to invite her. She was about to toss the card when a smaller note slipped out. It was tucked carefully into the folds, handwritten. No name. He lied to both of us, to both of Ditohad. Alice froze. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the ink slightly blurred, as if written in a hurry. But the message landed like a blade. He didn't lie to you. He lied to both of us. She read it again, and again. For the first time in months, Alice felt something stir beneath the exhaustion. Not rage, not pain. Something else. Confirmation. She sat at the kitchen table, the triplets sleeping in the next room, and looked at the two pieces of paper. One dressed in gold, the other bleeding the truth. The wedding was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks to unravel the mystery. 3 weeks to decide whether to burn the past in silence or walk into the fire. She pulled out Ben's sealed folders again, placing them beside the invitation. She reread the call logs, the timelines, the transactions. Ava's name appeared on nearly every entry. But this note, this message, didn't sound like something Ava would send. If she knew what Marcus had done, why stay? Unless she had just found out herself. Alice got up and walked to the window. Rain splattered the glass in rhythmic taps. Across the street, a delivery man huddled under an awning, reading his phone with a worried expression. Everyone, it seemed, had something they weren't saying. Alice traced a finger along the edge of the card. She didn't need an invitation, but now that she had one, she wasn't going to turn it down. She reached into her drawer and pulled out 3 small photo envelopes. Inside, Ella, Jonas, Mia, one in each. Wide-eyed faces. Innocent. She tucked them into her purse, just in case. The wedding wouldn't just be a spectacle, it would be a revelation. And for the first time since Marcus had disappeared, Alice didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a storm. What do you think Alice will do with that information? Will she dare to go to the wedding? Don't miss the conclusion and leave us your prediction. I saw her. The villa should have felt like a dream. White stone walls warmed by the California sun. Lace curtains, dancing with the breeze. A Vera Wang wedding dress hanging from the headboard of the bed like a promise. But Ava Thompson hadn't slept in 2 nights. Not well. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her. A woman. Faceless. Silent. Standing at the end of the aisle, holding 3 children. She never moved. She just watched. Ava woke up gasping both times. Now she sat on the edge of the 4-poster bed, reviewing emails on Marcus's spare laptop. He had left it open again. A habit he used to call transparency, but that lately felt more like carelessness. She clicked through his finance folders. At first it was curiosity. Then, pattern recognition. There were payments to holding companies she didn't recognize, transfers labeled consulting for absurd amounts, and an LLC registered under Thorn Strategic, dated the week Marcus had proposed to her. Her eyes narrowed. Next, she opened the call records. Dozens of missed calls from a blocked number. A recurring contact stood out. Viridian. It called every few days. It left no voicemail. Marcus never mentioned it. She turned to the nightstand and reached for her phone. Then she hesitated. As she had known, there were parts of Marcus he kept locked away. It came with the territory. Billionaires didn't get that rich without secrets. But lately, the shadows were growing darker. He had become cold, quick to anger, dismissive when she asked about the prenup or his sudden insistence on exclusive control of their joint accounts. "You don't need to worry about that," he had said last week, waving her off. "Just focus on looking stunning when you walk down that aisle." She had laughed then, but something in his tone had stuck with her. The way he said that aisle, as if it were a finish line, not a beginning. Ava clicked on a folder labeled Private Archive. Inside were scanned documents, a lease termination agreement for an apartment in San Francisco, property reassignment, prenuptial amendments, and finally, a heavily redacted paternity acknowledgement form. Her breath hitched. The signature field at the bottom. It read, Marcus Thorne. The co-signer's line was scratched out, sloppily, like someone trying to hide something in a hurry. She didn't need to guess who signed it. Suddenly, the nightmares made sense. The woman at the end of the aisle wasn't a ghost. She was unfinished business. Ava leaned back, nausea twisting in her stomach. She thought of the handwritten note she had slipped into the wedding invitation weeks ago. A desperate act, sent to an address she had found buried in a tax record. She hadn't expected a response. She had only hoped Alice would understand. Now, with the wedding 24 hours away, she wasn't sure who the bride really was, or if the altar would be the safest place to be. How do you feel about Ava at this moment? Do you think she is also a victim of Marcus? Share your impressions. The music faded as the officiant cleared his throat. Guests shifted in their seats. Faces were turned up to the California sun, all fixed on the breathtaking sight of Ava in her ivory dress. Marcus stood tall, impeccable as ever, his hands clasped at his waist. But something about his jaw was tense. His eyes darted to the garden entrance, more often than they should. Ava noticed. She noticed everything now. The breeze whispered through the lemon trees. The violinist adjusted her bow. The ceremony had begun, and then it didn't. A ripple moved through the crowd. Heads turned again. Alice Sterling walked in like a whisper, with no fanfare, no drama. Just a mother in black, walking quietly down the side of the aisle. 3 small children trailed behind her, holding hands, their legs wobbly, their eyes wide with innocence. And no one moved. Not even Ava. Not even Marcus. Alice said nothing. She didn't look at him. She didn't look at her. She walked past the floral arrangements. She walked past the altar, and she stopped beside a small stone pedestal near the edge of the seating rows. On it, she placed a cream-colored folder. Closed. Deliberate. Then, without a word, she walked to the back row and sat down. The children climbed onto her lap, one resting his cheek on her shoulder, another sucking his thumb, the third whispering something unintelligible into her ear. The guests watched, stunned. The silence was unbearable. Marcus didn't move. His knuckles were white. Ava stepped forward slowly and picked up the folder. Her hands trembled as she opened it. 3 documents, 3 DNA reports, each with her fiancé's name printed in bold. Marcus Thorne, biological father. Ava's throat constricted, her vision blurred. She flipped through each page. First Ella, then Jonas, then Mia. Dates, signatures, genetic markers, all conclusive. She looked at Marcus. He didn't deny it. He didn't even blink. I asked you, Ava said, her voice low but clear, if there was anything I should know before this wedding. The officiant lowered his book. Marcus's lips parted. Then they closed. The crowd watched as the man they once revered crumbled. One silent accusation at a time. Alice did not flinch. She held her children, her face unreadable. The child on her lap pointed toward the altar and whispered, "Mommy, that's the man from the picture." Alice simply nodded. Ava turned to the crowd, then back to Marcus. You lied to her. You lied to me. You built all this on a lie. He stepped toward her. Ava. Listen. She backed away. "No," she said. "You listen," because she already did. And look where it got her. Ava dropped the folder at her feet. The wind caught one of the pages and carried it toward the aisle, where it landed beside a guest's shoe. The officiant stepped back. "I think we will pause the ceremony." But it wasn't a pause. It was an end. Marcus looked around, at the faces. No longer could he control. At the fiancé who no longer trusted him. At the past that had finally arrived. Holding his children, the folder still lay open on the ground, its contents scattered like broken glass. Marcus didn't pick it up. Instead, he turned, his eyes burning, toward Alice, sitting silently in the back. "You planned this," he spat. "You came here to humiliate me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Alice did not stand. She did not flinch. She adjusted her son's head on her shoulder and replied calmly, "No, Marcus. You humiliated yourself. I just brought the truth." He took a step forward, his fist clenched. "You don't get to walk into my wedding and play the victim. You had your chance." "Marcus," Ava interrupted, her voice suddenly cold. "Stop!" He turned, startled. "You lied about everything," she said. "The kids, the money, even the prenup." "That is none of your business," he replied, louder than he intended. "You think you know everything? You don't know what she put me through." Alice stood up now, quiet and straight, cradling her son, as if to protect him from nothing more than a breeze. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small black phone. "Let's remind everyone." With one touch, his voice rang through the courtyard, followed by his. "They're mine, okay? I know they are, but I'm not ready for that life. Not with her. Just sign the forms," his voice continued. "Transfer whatever she wants. I just need her to be gone." Then silence. Even the birds stopped singing. Marcus's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The truth hung heavily in the air, undeniable and damning. Alice put the phone away. That was a month before she gave birth. She turned to leave, her children clinging to her arms and dress. Ava looked at Marcus one last time. Then she bent down. She took off her engagement ring and placed it on the altar. "No ceremony can undo who you are," she said. Then she walked not toward the villa, but behind Alice. Two women, once bound by betrayal, now set free by the truth. And Marcus Thorne, the billionaire CEO, was left alone under a California sky that suddenly felt far too vast. What an impactful ending. What do you think of Ava's decision? Do you believe Marcus will get what he deserves? Leave us your comments, and don't forget to share this video. 6 months later, the courtroom didn't feel like a victory. It felt like a post-mortem. Polished oak floors, cold lighting, no cameras, no press, just silence, tension, and consequences. Alice sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, her attorney beside her. She wore navy blue this time, not black. Strength, not mourning. Across the aisle, Marcus Thorne sat alone. No tie, no arrogance. Just a broken man in an expensive suit, staring at the floor. Ava had already testified that morning. Her words had cut sharper than any attorney's. He asked me to destroy the paternity documents. He told me Alice was a scammer, that the children weren't his. But I saw the truth. I saw their eyes. When she left the witness stand, she did not look back. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and an unforgiving clarity, delivered the verdict. Full legal and physical custody granted to Alice Sterling. Retroactive child support payments covering all lost years. Plus damages. A 40% stake in Thorne Strategic, awarded due to proven fraud and concealment of assets during the marriage. Marcus Thorne found guilty of multiple state and federal statutes. Civil charges pending. The courtroom remained still as the gavel fell. No applause, just breath held and released. Marcus did not argue. He did not stand. He didn't even blink as security approached with paperwork. Alice gathered her documents and rose. Outside, the city buzzed. Paparazzi waited across the street, but they were too slow. She slipped down the courthouse steps with her children, one in each hand, the third strapped to her back. Mia pointed at the marble pillars. "Are we going back inside?" Alice smiled softly. "No, sweetie, that chapter is closed." A young reporter ran up. "Mrs. Sterling, any comment for the press?" She did not stop walking, but she did speak. "Under," she said, clearly, so her children would hear her. "We don't need his name, only the truth." And that was all. The sun broke through the gray clouds. Alice crossed the street, not as a victim, not as an ex-wife, but as a woman who rebuilt herself from betrayal. And behind her, Marcus Thorne remained. Inside a courthouse built by power, and now claimed by justice. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. We hope it touched you and made you think. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Your support helps us continue creating new and amazing content for you. Until next time.